Audi's R8 gets sharper, smarter and faster in second generation form. Turning away from the tide towards turbocharging, it uses an aurally magnificent, normally aspirated 5.2 litre V10 and promises race-bred but road-ready four-wheel drive performance, able to justify its newfound supercar status. Rivals must take this car very seriously indeed.
They say that success breeds success, but the reality is that breeds expectation. Such is Audi's problem here. Back in 2006, the brand commemorated their victory in the Le Mans 24-hour race by launching their very first supercar, the R8, and it surpassed almost everybody's expectations. This second-generation version, launched in the middle of 2015, must build on that car's legacy. Quite a task. The original R8, you see, succeeded in nailing the super sports car brief first time out. It was the first contender in years to properly scare the benchmark player in the segment, Porsche's 911, something that models from BMW, Mercedes, Jaguar and Aston Martin had been trying to do for decades. With this second generation version though, the brief is rather different, even though in terms of exterior execution it may appear much the same. Where the original R8 aspired to supercar status, this Mark II model's power and pricing boldly claims to have attained it. Why the change? Well, for one thing, Audi now knows that buyers will pay exalted prices for an R8. Successful run-out limited edition versions of the original model proved that. In addition, with the Porsche 911 these days a Volkswagen Group product, it's no longer necessary for the R8 to compete with volume versions of that car. So its focus has instead shifted to more exotic fare, McLaren's 540C and the Mercedes-AMG GT. Maybe also the latest Honda NSX. With the R8 though, there is one crucial difference. All these brands, like Porsche and Ferrari, believe that a modern supercar must have a high-tech turbocharged engine. Audi doesn't. And I will understand if you think that doesn't sound very Vorsprung durch Technik, though to be fair, the normally aspirated 5.2 litre V10 on offer here has its share of cleverness. Ingolstadt doesn't care. They had a 4-litre turbo V8 that they could easily have inserted into this car, but they chose not to use it, deciding instead that a proper supercar should sound and feel like one. And in that regard, there's no substitute for the kind of high-revving cubic capacity that rivals have disregarded in their stampede towards efficiency. As before, it's a formula shared with Lamborghini and with the R8 LMS GT3 race car that rolls down the same Quattro GmbH production line as this road version. It is the fastest and most powerful Audi ever made. A triumph on the track that claims to be a revelation on the road. Time to put it to the test. All the ingredients are here for a world-beating sports car. Relatively lightweight, an agile chassis and a proper mid-mountain configuration for the glorious throbbing engine. But where Porsche and the exotic Italian brands have had nearly 50 years to blend these things into world-beating perfection, Audi had to start from a clean sheet at the turn of the century with the R8. In the original version, that didn't seem to matter. It was brilliant. This second generation model, though, is a pricier and more powerful thing, a bona fide supercar with a much tougher set of rivals to beat. Is it up to the challenge? Well, you can't help thinking so once you push the red starter button on the steering wheel. Listen to that. If it's drama you're after, then this engine delivers it. The power plant in question, a 5.2 litre normally aspirated V10. Audi spurning the current trend towards turbocharging that even Ferrari has found it impossible to resist. It'll scare small animals and children. It'll infuriate your neighbours. And it's exactly the sound a car of this kind should make. There's no entry-level V8 option this time around, and no manual gearbox alternative either. These features both inappropriate in a supercar segment in which over 500 PS is routine and close to 200 miles an hour capability expected. You can though get that V10 in a choice of outputs, 540 PS on offer from the entry-level variant and 610 PS available from the V10 Plus derivative that we're trying here. Either way, your engine will be mated to a 7-speed S-tronic automatic transmission and comes capable of suitably sensational statistics. 62 miles an hour is just 3.5 seconds away from rest en route to 199 miles an hour in the standard version. Readings of this V10 Plus variant improved to 3.2 seconds and 205 miles per hour. The only other alternative is the rare all-electric R8 e-tron model that you can ask your dealer about. Built only to special order, it's powered by 2 electric motors on the rear axle that together generate 468 PS, yet offer an impressive range of nearly 280 miles when the 90.3 kilowatt-hour lithium-ion battery is fully charged. I'd miss the aural fireworks of this V10 though, its sound and fury real and authentic rather than artificially processed through a sound actuator as the amplified exhaust note is on Audi's lesser sports car, the TT. It's a symphony you can properly orchestrate too via a button here on the steering wheel that's provided if you've opted for the extra cost sport exhaust that we just think you have to have. This is one of 4 circular satellite controls added onto this second generation R8 model's wheel. The other key one being that to activate the Drive Select dynamic driving system. Here, as usual with setups of this sort, throttle response, steering, stability control thresholds and gear shift timings can be tweaked to suit the kind of progress that you want to make. In its standard form, Drive Select offers comfort and dynamic modes, plus an auto option if you can't decide, and an individual setting if you want to configure the various elements to suit personal preference. Go for this V10 Plus variant and you get even more choices, as here Audi adds in an extra performance mode, apparently intended for track use, but which of course you'll probably want to play with at every opportunity. Through this, you're given further dry, wet or snow sub-modes, each one selectable from this smaller satellite control just below the main Drive Select button. The other thing Drive Select can influence is ride and suspension, although it'll only be able to do that if you've paid extra for the clever Audi magnetic ride damper control system. It's a feature that's well worth having, especially with the firmer sport suspension you have to have on this V10 Plus model, allowing you to focus your R8 when you're in the mood and dial it right back when you're not. That's important, given that Audi wants this model to be capable of the kind of daily driving lifestyle that you wouldn't want to put up with in an Italian supercar. Hence a level of urban manoeuvrability that belies the low seating position and this second generation model's extra width. Yet it must still, when called upon, deliver brutal performance, tremendous traction and astonishing agility. Does it? Well, the speed sensation we've already touched upon. There's launch control to fire you off the line with a flex of your right foot that sends the rev needle shooting round the colour-changing rev counter you get in performance mode. If it isn't flashing red as the steering wheel paddle shifters chained up, then you're just not trying hard enough. Audi talks of a 20% improvement in throttle response this time around, and you can really feel it as the gauge flares up to the 8,700 RPM red line and then never strays more than 2,000 RPM from it as the twin clutch gearbox throws ratio after short stacked ratio with rifle crack speed, and the car hurls itself at the horizon with animal savagery. As for the corners, well, it turns, it grips, and it goes, courtesy of the kind of four-wheel drive system that rivals from Mercedes, Ferrari, McLaren, and Aston Martin will make you do without. This one's an updated Quattro setup, able to flash 100% of torque to either axle instantly on demand, and as a result, traction levels are so high that anyone starting to approach this car's limit on a public road will quickly make themselves a target for the local constabulary. As for agility, well, this time around that's aided by lighter weight, extra torsional rigidity and a torque vectoring system that deals with tight turns at speed by dialing out understeer and channeling power to the wheels that can best use it. A pity though that this is somewhat masked by an electrical steering system lacking that final touch of feel that transforms the driving experience of a rival Porsche 911 from being merely good to feeling absolutely great. As rivals have found, adding in an optional speed variable steering setup doesn't solve this problem. In fact, it arguably exacerbates it. We've got that extra cost feature here and it still doesn't offer quite the feedback we'd like. Audi's engineers really need to learn from Porsche here. That apart, we're finding it very hard to criticise this car. We'd worried that in second generation form it might have lost a little of its earlier magic, but instead, as the miles have clicked by, we've been reminded all over again just why we loved it in the first place. Aside from steering feel at the helm, it's an improvement on its predecessor in every verifiable regard. Easy to acclimatise to, free of nasty habits, and aurally awesome. We love the new tech too, particularly the virtual cockpit instruments and the optional laser light headlamps, all of it creating a genuinely complete and very special product that's also accessible to an uninitiated buyer in a supercar segment full of faintly frightening options. Certainly, if you were someone seeking to graduate from the lower to the upper, more powerful tier of supercar ownership, then owning one of these still remains the perfect way to ease the transition, as part of an experience that you'll really want to remember. Visually, the R8 remains much as it was, a distinctive cocktail of low-slung curves and delightful design extravagance, though the influential shape of the previous model is now expressed in a tauter, more technically precise way. As before, we're talking Ferrari, but with a German twist. Now, whether you think Audi should have more fundamentally changed it this time around comes down to personal perspective. Aesthetic continuity certainly hasn't done Porsche's 911 any harm over the last half a century. This car doesn't have that one's understated elegance, but whether you choose this coupe body style or the Spider convertible, it looks more exotic and exclusive, just as a six-figure supercar should. Horizontal lines define the front end with its huge sculptural single-frame radiator grille, here honeycomb trim to emphasise this particular model's more exalted V10 Plus status. These large trapezoidal air inlets are also honeycomb finished and feature vertical slats matching the daytime running light blades in the wedge-shaped headlamps that sit above. Here, the blade in each light is finished in anodized blue, designating the addition of Audi's optional laser light technology, there to double the range of the high beam. In profile, owners of earlier models will note this second generation version's similarity in length and height to its predecessor, but they will also pick up on the design change that further picks out this car's most unique feature, these distinctive and customizable side blades. Previously one-piece attachments, these are now bisected by the more flowing shoulder line, which is itself gently massaged by contours above the wheels that are supposed to reference the Quattro four-wheel drive system. The door handles, previously prominent, are now almost invisibly positioned in the shoulder line shadow, while lower down the light edges on the side sills echo those of Audi's Le Mans winning R18 e-tron Quattro race car. More beautiful detailing is provided by this motorsport style aluminium fuel lid integrated into the upper blade of the right hand side of the car. At the rear, there are further race references, primarily with the visible mechanical components you can see through the mesh venting that lies beneath the dual-light taillights, each lamp incorporating 118 individual LEDs and set above dynamic rear turn signals. This is the part of the car where you most notice the extra 11 millimeters of width provided by this second generation design. Something that's emphasised by this enormous diffuser with distinctive slats that flank the two trapezoidal tailpipes of the exhaust system. The black finish you get with these here delineates this variant's loftier V10 Plus status, as does this huge fixed carbon fibre trimmed rear wing that on this top model replaces the usual retractable spoiler and helps to generate up to 140 kilograms of downforce. Glance above it, and as ever with an R8, there is the pièce de résistance, the enormous 5.2 litre V10 engine sitting in its own illuminated bay like a work of art in a display case. Of course, as ever, what really matters is the stuff you can't see. Like its predecessor, this second generation R8 uses lightweight ASF, Audi space frame construction, shared as before with an equivalent model from the Volkswagen Group's Lamborghini brand, in this case the Huracan. This time round, though, the ASF structure is fashioned not only from aluminium, but also from an even more advanced material, carbon fibre reinforced polymer. Now, that has not only helped make this car 32 kilograms lighter this time around, but also contributes to a 40% improvement in torsional rigidity. Getting in is something it's possible to manage in a more graceful manner than is the case with most models of this kind. And once inside, you're introduced to what Audi calls a luxury level racing atmosphere, and an interior that remains an object lesson in how to package a two-seat sports car. True, you don't get the exotic feel of a Ferrari or a Lamborghini in here, but personally, we'd trade that for the extra space, the fantastic build quality, and the better all-round visibility provided by an R8. Audi is much better at ergonomics than most of its rivals too. You can't, for example, imagine an Ingolstadt designer ever putting the indicators on the steering wheel in the irritating way that they are in a Ferrari or a Lamborghini. As before, one of the cockpit's key distinguishing features is what the stylists call the monoposto, a stylised large arc that encircles the driver's area of the cockpit, starting at the door and ending at the centre tunnel. But if that's familiar, then there's also plenty that's different too. The changes beginning with this grippy, flat-bottomed R8 performance steering wheel. Extra round satellite buttons have been added to control engine startup, exhaust sound and driving dynamics, with an end result that's both pleasing and effective. A further evolution here lies with the deletion of the previous model's centre dash MMI monitor. In its place is a large air vent with vertical louvers that are supposed to reference the air intake of a race car. These positioned above three cylindrical chrome trim climate control dials that are modelled on the look of aircraft jet turbines. As for the infotainment functionality, well, as with Ingolstadt's humbler TT sports car, that has all been relocated to what we're supposed to call the Audi Virtual Cockpit, a 12.3-inch high-resolution instrument binnacle display that completely replaces the usual set of conventional dials. As with the TT, pressing a view button on the steering wheel enables you to toggle between various different virtual cockpit options. The classic view gives you a prominent speedo and rev counter, while an alternative infotainment view brings functions like this navigation map to the fore. R8 V10 Plus drivers get a third performance viewing option that sees a large central rev counter dominating the centre of the screen, around which you can configure in various smaller virtual gauges, including a G-meter, a lap timer and various readouts that update you on things like temperatures and tyre pressures. Whatever virtual cockpit setting you choose, telephone, media, trip and car settings can be dealt with by voice control, handled from the steering wheel buttons, or covered by fiddling with the touch-sensitive centre MMI controller below the gear stick. You can deal with audio functionality this way too, which in this particular case allows control of an optional and glorious sounding 13-speaker Bang & Olufsen advanced sound system. Not everything's perfect, of course. The whole virtual cockpit concept carries with it the disadvantage that the front seat passenger can no longer reach the stereo system. Well, or in theory they can't anyway. Actually, a perusal of the handbook reveals that there's the option of tracing commands with your fingertips on the surface of the silver-trimmed rotary MMI infotainment system dial that you'll find on the centre console just behind the gear stick. Other issues are, well, really just down to niggly things. The heartbeat sound effect this R8 insists on delivering when you power off is simply annoying. And we don't much like these rather small steering wheel paddle shifters, even in the upgraded aluminium look form in which they appear in this plusher V10 Plus model. Aluminium look. Now what's that about on a car of this price? These are, after all, one of the most important points of interaction with this car. Trimming mistakes of that sort are otherwise notable by their absence. This V10 Plus variant gets stainless steel pedals and matte carbon inlays to complement what would normally be a pair of race-ready bucket seats. Here, though, these have been replaced by the more supportive sports chairs you get in the standard V10. In this case, embellished by a pneumatic adjustment and lovely diamond quilted stitching. All these seat options feature fine perforated Napa leather that, as an option, can be extended across the dashboard and right around the cabin, as it has been here. The whole effect is completed with this exquisite optional Alcantara roof lining. As for practicalities, well, there's more than you might expect in terms of cabin storage, with a big glove box compensating to some extent for these tiny door pockets. The cup holders that you'd have to do without in this car's Lamborghini cousin are here, present and correct, in a lidded compartment between the seats. Plus there's a coin slot to the left of the lovely aircraft-style gear stick and storage space ahead of it that includes USB connections, an aux-in point and a 12-volt socket. And beyond that, well, were we to be graduating into this car from a 911, we would miss the little rear seats that Porsche gives you there. They're so useful for chucking a jacket or a designer shopping bag onto. Audi has tried to compensate by providing a space behind the seats that it claims is large enough to accommodate a golf bag. Yes, well, it has to be a fairly small one. You're certainly not going to fit anything of that sort in the boot. Now, given that huge engine display cabinet out back, the luggage bay, as in a 911, is in the front. Now, at 112 litres in size, it isn't very big at all, with further precious cubic inches occupied by a bag for the tyre repair kit that Audi provides in lieu of a spare wheel. To be fair, the boot beneath the bonnet of a 911 Turbo is about the same size, but it's also true that a comparable McLaren model gives you about 30% more space, while cars like the Mercedes-AMG GT are vastly more practical. The optional storage pack gives you these useful side nets. The original R8 was never a bona fide supercar, instead targeting more affordable versions of Porsche's 911 in the £70,000 to £90,000 bracket. It's very different now. The Volkswagen Group bought out Porsche in 2012, making the 911 a relative rather than a rival. So Carrera versions of that car are now a stepping stone towards a second generation R8 that's now firmly established in six-figure territory. As it did with the first generation version, Audi has developed both coupe and open-topped Spider derivatives of this car, the fixed roof variant being our focus point here. This R8's ascent into supercar status means that there's no entry-level V8 engine or manual gearbox option this time around. Just two versions of the aggressively melodic 5.2-litre normally aspirated V10 that this Quattro GmbH engineered model shares with its Sant'Agata cousin, Lamborghini's Huracan, and mated to a 7-speed S-tronic paddle-shift auto gearbox. Now, R8 pricing starts at around £120,000 for the standard 540 PS V10 model, but most likely buyers will want to look at finding the extra £15,000 necessary to stretch to the 610 PS V10 Plus variant that we're trying here. Now, as well as that extra power, that heftier £135,000 asking price also gets you a slightly different look, courtesy of two things. Forged rather than cast 19-inch wheels coloured in matte titanium with a diamond cut finish, and a fixed carbon fibre rear wing that isn't retractable like the standard model spoiler. Buyers of this Plus variant will find more carbon fibre trimming on the door mirrors, the side blades and the rear diffuser. While inside, they'll enjoy shell-backed bucket seats, stainless steel pedals and a high beam assist feature for the headlights. More importantly, the V10 Plus model's asking figure also includes an extra performance drive mode with wet, dry and snow options that function as part of the included Audi Drive Select vehicle dynamic system. And you get as standard the carbon ceramic brakes with their Audi branded anthracite coloured calipers that would add nearly £8,000 to the cost of the standard derivative. So onto the value proposition that the R8 asking figures represent. I've talked of the way that humbler Carrera versions of the Porsche 911 no longer provide direct competition for this car, but there is a 911 variant that very definitely does. The 547 PS 911 Turbo model is arguably this car's closest rival, priced and powered directly between the two R8 derivatives. Ultimately, though, it's a bespoilered, more powerful version of a car costing half as much, which won't please supercar buyers looking for something exotic. Now, that Lamborghini Huracan model I just mentioned is certainly that, but in equivalent LP610-4 guise, it's mechanically identical to an R8 Plus while being less day-to-day usable. It also costs around £180,000, which takes you firmly into the kind of Ferrari 488 GTB territory that even Audi hesitates to stray towards. We think it's more credible to compare this R8 against Honda's second generation NSX, although there you might well be put off by the weight and complexity of that model's hybrid powertrain. The other cars we'd most readily nominate as direct rivals to this one are British-bred, McLaren's so-called Sports Series models, the 540 PS 540C targeted at the R8 V10 and the 570 PS 570S precisely levelled at this R8 V10 Plus variant. And they're very good indeed, but then they need to be to justify respective premiums of £6,000 and £9,000 over this Audi, a price difference that would grow if you spec'd a McLaren to match an equivalent R8. Perhaps the biggest issue, though, is that the four-wheel drive system that you get on this Audi, and indeed on a 911 Turbo, an NSX or a top Huracan, isn't offered on those McLaren models, which means that a 540C or a 570S driver following an R8 in the wet would quite simply be left floundering. The same issue applies if, in preference to this Audi, you pay a little less for a Mercedes-AMG GTS or a Ford GT, or a little more for an Aston Martin V12 Vantage. In a country with so many days of rain a year as ours, do you really want to be marshalling well over 500 brake horses through your rear wheels? Now, Bentley's Continental GT does have four-wheel drive, but the V8S model that you'd have to match this Audi's performance costs around £150,000 and is 30% heavier, so would be clunkier to drive. I mean, in short, it's not really a supercar. This R8, though, very definitely is, and if, having carefully considered all the other options, you conclude that this is what you want, then you're going to need to know just how generous Audi has been when it comes to standard kit. Well, let's see. Now, I've mentioned the key items that set this V10 Plus variant apart from the base variant, but it is also worth pointing out that all R8s come as well equipped as the lofty asking prices would entitle you to expect. So as well as 19-inch wheels, buyers get LED headlights and tail lights, heat-insulating glass, and a choice of solid, metallic, pearl or crystal effect paint finishes. Inside there's a flat-bottomed, three-spoke performance leather steering wheel, climate-controlled air conditioning and fine Napa leather trim for the heated, powered front seats. You also get preparation for a tracking system, front and rear parking sensors, auto headlamps and wipers, an auto-dimming rear-view mirror, and an interior light pack that, in a nice touch, also illuminates the engine bay. Driving stuff includes sport suspension and the Audi Drive Select system, so you can set the throttle, the steering, the gear shift and stability system responses to exactly suit the way that you want to drive. There's also a complimentary R8 driving experience day included in the price to help you get to grips with all of this on track at Silverstone. Plenty of infotainment technology comes included too, courtesy of the brand's top MMI Navigation Plus with MMI Touch infotainment system. And that's integrated neatly into the standard 12.3-inch Audi virtual cockpit display. The MMI package includes sat-nav, a DVD drive, the useful Audi music interface, a 10GB flash memory for music data, 2 SD card readers, text-to-speak messaging and a DAB radio playing through the 5 speakers of the Audi sound system. Plus there's a Bluetooth interface complemented by 3 microphones integrated into the seat belts so that when you make calls on the move, the recipients will be able to hear you over the roar of that thumping 5.2-litre V10 throbbing away behind. That MMI infotainment package also delivers all the advantages of the Audi Connect system, a data transmission module that lets the driver network with the internet and uses the superfast LTE long-term evolution network. The central component here is mobile phone preparation. The Connect setup will seamlessly interface with your mobile to provide an internet connection and allow passengers to conveniently surf and email with up to 8 mobile devices via an integrated WLAN or wireless local area network hotspot. Audi Connect also brings you features such as navigation with images from Google Earth, Google Points of Interest search by voice control and Google Street View. Connect further adds the Audi Music Stream system with web radio plus access to social media services such as Facebook and Twitter. There's also Audi online traffic information that takes the movement data from the thousands of smartphones and navigation units that are travelling on the road and can inform you of average speeds, predicted journey times and recommended reroutes. Watch your roaming charges though if you're using that abroad. So much for the standard R8 specification. This, though, is very much a bespoke product that owners will want to create to suit their own personal preferences. Now, I'll give you some options for doing that in a minute, but to start with, there are some key boxes that you're going to need to think about ticking, whichever version of this car you're looking at. Well, let's start with a feature that we would certainly want, Audi Magnetic Ride. Some writers have questioned whether this adaptive suspension setup is worth paying extra for, but all they've probably done is thrash the car around a smooth racetrack on a press launch. Many likely owners will be using their R8s every day, and for such regular use, the option of being able to switch the ride into a comfort-orientated mode via the Drive Select system will be very welcome indeed, especially with the firmer passive setup. We'd take this and the optional sport exhaust system that at the touch of a steering wheel button dials up the tailpipe burble to a point that really will annoy your neighbours on a still clear morning. Brilliant. We're less sure about the dynamic steering system, which is a pity because the electric steering isn't this car's strongest point, and it would be nice if this optional setup improved it. Unfortunately, many feel, as we indeed do, that the variable speed sensitive assistance of the dynamic package fails to do that. So try before you buy is our advice. Having said that, if you take our advice and choose the magnetic ride and the sport exhaust, the dynamic steering option comes as part of a Sport Plus pack for hardly any extra money. So unless you really don't like it, it's probably worth having anyway. The other key driving feature to consider is whether you need to upgrade the LED headlights with the Audi laser light system. Here, an extra laser light high beam supplements the LED high beam at speeds of over 37 miles an hour, lighting your way ahead for up to 600 meters. This feature also comes packaged up with dynamic front indicators that sweep from inside to out. On to exterior styling. Now, as I suggested at the very beginning of this section, a lot of the things that you'll probably want here will come ready fitted if you go for this V10 Plus version. The gloss carbon exterior styling pack and the gloss carbon exterior mirror housings that you get with this variant are massively expensive additions to the standard model. The major personalisable exterior elements, though, are these lovely side blades. On the Plus version, they too come in gloss carbon, but if you don't like that, then there are 5 other colour options. Alternatively, the Audi exclusive programme will deliver paintwork and side blade colouring in just about any shade you want, however garish your taste might be. Grey and bright orange, anyone? Wheels, of course, are another key thing to get right, so there's a wide choice of 19 and 20-inch rims. And we'd also be rather tempted by this car's lovely gloss carbon engine bay trim package. Inside, the race-ready bucket seats that are standard in the Plus model with the colour customisable shellbacks won't be to everyone's taste, so if you want, you can deselect them in favour of the slightly comfier sports seats fitted to the standard model. Now, these have the advantage of being compatible with Isofix child seat fastenings, and they can be upgraded with a stitched diamond quilting design, as well as pneumatic seat backrest and side bolster adjustment. Beyond that, we'd want to look at the optional extended leather package that covers the dashboard, the door armrests and much of the rest of the cabin with fine Napa leather. We'd complete the effect by trimming the steering wheel rim and the gear selector with the lovely optional black suede finish that Audi offers. The Alcantara headlining would be nice too, also available in a stitched diamond design. Now, the fact that you can also line the luggage compartment in Alcantara brings me to optional practicalities. With the restricted luggage space of this car, we think you're going to need the storage package that gives you nets behind the front seats and at the sides of the luggage compartment. If you're going to put Audi's claim of being able to carry a set of golf clubs behind the seats to the test, you probably need to purchase a bespoke bag from your dealer to be able to do it. Going further, you can also add in exclusive branded floor mats and personalisable illuminated door sill trims. Most R8 buyers tend to tick the box for the driver assistance pack, although the 2 elements it includes, a reversing camera and cruise control, really should be standard. We'd also want the Audi phone box option that boosts your smartphone reception for in-car use, and we'd probably find the extra for the Bang & Olufsen sound system, a 13-speaker, 550-watt setup that comes with a 16-channel amplifier, a subwoofer and LED accent speaker lighting. Finally, you might also want to pay for the factory collection package that'll fly you to the German Neckarsulm factory to see your car being hand-built prior to your being able to drive it home. We'll finish this section by talking about safety. Now, one surprise here is that Audi has chosen not to equip this car with the kind of cutting-edge, camera-based safety features that are now becoming commonplace on much humbler cars. For instance, one of those autonomous braking setups that scans the road ahead for potential accident hazards and will then help you brake to avoid them. The Ingolstadt brand makes the excuse that cars of this kind are all about lightweight and that adding those kind of features would hurt the R8 on the scales. For us, that's a poor excuse. I mean, these are electronic rather than mechanical systems after all. To be fair to Audi, you don't get this kind of tech in obvious rivals either, but that's no excuse for not taking the lead and fitting it here. It's not very Vorsprung durch Technik. What you do get are all the usual electronic aids for braking, traction and stability control, including an ESC system that now includes torque vectoring for sharper corner turning. Plus, as you'd expect, you get twin front, side and curtain airbags. Audi's decision to ignore a switch to turbocharged power for this second generation R8 was an undeniably brave one, and the consequences are there for all to see when it comes to the question of running costs. An R8 V10 is around 25% less economical than a similarly powerful Porsche 911 Turbo, delivering 24.8 miles per gallon on the combined cycle, as opposed to the far more creditable 31 miles per gallon figure you get not only with the 911, but also from another key turbocharged rival, Mercedes-AMG GT. Fortunately for Audi, that deficit will be partly disguised in everyday use by the fact that the standard R8's fuel tank is very usefully sized at 83 litres, much bigger than the 68-litre item you'd have to put up within the 911. We should point out that this Pokia V10 Plus model, which manages 23 miles per gallon on the combined cycle, gets a slightly smaller 73-litre tank, but even so, a significant advantage remains. Slightly more pressing for potential R8 buyers might be the tax implications of a CO2 return figure that's 272 grams per kilometre in the standard model and 287 grams per kilometre in this V10 Plus version. Now, for reference, the comparable S version of Mercedes-AMG GT manages 219 grams per kilometre, while a 911 Turbo is down at 212 grams per kilometre. I mean, to be fair, we should also mention that McLaren's rival turbocharged Sports Series 540C and 570S models are hardly any cheaper to run than their R8 counterparts. And there's something like an Aston Martin V12 Vantage or DB11 would be a lot pricier to keep on the road. Audi's perspective on this is predictably rather different. The company points out that the oral fireworks of high-revving, naturally aspirated power have to cost you somewhere, and that in this case their engineers have worked very hard to minimise the pain in the wallet region. Primarily, their work in doing this has centred around the adoption of the clever COD cylinder-on-demand technology that the company pioneered in its V8 models. When one of the 4 upper gears is engaged, this shuts down the cylinders on either the left or the right bank of the engine. What this means is that at low speeds, when you're driving off throttle, you'll probably be at the wheel of a V5 rather than a V10 R8. There's more too. At under 34 miles an hour, when the drive select system is set in comfort mode, the S-tronic auto gearbox switches over to freewheeling operation when you release the accelerator pedal, leaving the car to coast until you touch the throttle again. Plus, when you stop temporarily, say in traffic or at the lights, there is a start-stop system to cut the engine. It's all led to some useful improvements over the running cost figures provided by the final versions of the previous generation R8 V10. That car having been around 13% thirstier and dirtier in its standard form. The fact that this Mark II model is 32 kilograms lighter thanks to its CFRP, carbon fibre reinforced polymer construction, obviously helps here. This material is easier to recycle than conventional metals, and along with the more efficient engineering will, Audi says, allow this car to cut its greenhouse gas emissions by 2.6 tonnes over its lifetime in comparison with its predecessor. If running cost figures do happen to be an overriding concern for you as an R8 buyer, then you need to be talking to your Audi centre about the high-tech e-tron variant. Here, 2 electric motors on the rear axle generate 468 PS, yet offer an impressive range of nearly 280 miles when the 90.3 kilowatt-hour lithium-ion battery is fully charged, a process that can be completed in under 2 hours. What else? Well, you'll be able to get your R8 serviced at any Audi dealership, and there's a choice of fixed or flexible prepaid plans depending on whether you cover more or less than 10,000 miles a year. We are slightly disappointed by the 3-year 60,000 mile warranty though, particularly given that the mechanically identical and supposedly more temperamental Lamborghini Huracan comes with a 4-year unlimited mileage package. The 3-year deal that you get with equivalent McLaren and Porsche models is also unlimited mileage too. On to residuals. With only around 30 cars each day being hand-built at Audi's Neckarsulm factory, there's enough rarity value about this R8 to keep residuals buoyant. Expect depreciation to be a fraction behind that of a Porsche 911, but well ahead of something like BMW's i8. Finally, insurance premiums. Well, they will be as high as they inevitably are for any supercar, rated at a top-of-the-shop Group 50E. With the original R8, Audi set out to prove that it could build a supercar. Now it has. With this second-generation version, the aim was twofold: to perfect the original package and then prove it capable of edging towards the more exclusive territory occupied by Lamborghini, McLaren and Ferrari. A step too far? It seems not. The forings don't yet give this car the rarefied appeal of an Huracan or a 488 GTB, but in most meaningful respects, this Mark II model can match them car for car. Unlike its Italian rivals, it feels bulletproof. And unlike a Porsche 911 Turbo, it makes a six-figure statement. Audi has clearly benchmarked both approaches and blended Latin exclusivity with Teutonic day-to-day usability, creating a finished product that's difficult to beat if you want a car of this kind that you could drive every day. But does this second generation R8 have quite the charm of the original? Well, maybe not, but then to some extent, that is the price of progress, and quite a hefty price in this case. Audi could doubtless bring us a stripped-out, more focused, race-style version. Indeed, in the R8 LMS competition model, it already does. But that would be a vanity product rather than a relevant one. So we'll take this R8 as it is, loving its looks, its classic configuration, and its determination to stick with melodic, normally aspirated power. It's a very Audi supercar, and there's nothing quite like it.